Hi everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you, hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Gabrielle Ferree, head of PR at OneTrust. Gabrielle is a seasoned PR and marketing professional with nearly 10 years of experience helping high-growth tech companies across industries tell their stories through traditional and social media, executive communications, and advocate marketing. Her favorite part of the job is empowering OneTrust customers to be thought leaders and brand champions through powerful, successful stories. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone. This is the Dear BAMf podcast. Thanks for being here. This is season 2. I'm Beck Bamberger from BAM, as usual, as you've heard for quite some time now. And with us today, we're so excited because it's Gabrielle Ferree here from OneTrust, who's going to give us all the advice and insights of all your great questions that you guys send to us all the time. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Beck, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be on the show.
We are excited. So first off, we like to chat with just what's going on with you a little bit. Could you give us the 60-second soundbite on what OneTrust is about for those who don't know?
Absolutely. So I work at OneTrust. We are a B2B technology company. We're first born out of privacy, but now offer a full suite of products that help customers differentiate on the idea of trust. So what data do you have about me? And are you using it in a way that I can trust you to use it? So in the last 4 years, we've grown a lot. We have 7,500 customers, including more than half of the Fortune 500 and 1,500 employees across 12 global offices.
Wow. It's right on your website too. It says that you're on the Inc. 500 list, fastest growing, number one fastest growing company, 48,000% growth. Dang. You're the number one. The number one. Quite
a validation. We thought we were growing fast, but getting the number one on the Inc. 500 this year proved to us all that this is a unique place.
Yeah. Wow. Well, maybe that goes to the next thing, which is what are you most proud of accomplishing in, say, the last year, 12 months?
I mean, can you beat that? It's without a doubt.
I know.
And especially from the PR side of it, right? That was a really cool project. You know, I submitted the application, went through the revenue verifications, and then it went to...
Which is tedious.
Yes. Then it went into, well, we want to do an interview on you. And they're very coy about where your ranking is or what type of story they're doing on you. And I thought we could be definitely in the top 5 or 10 based on the numbers that I had at hand and looking at previous years. But then when, I got to set up an interview with our CEO and someone high up at Inc. to do the story, they sent a film crew like mid-COVID to do a photo shoot.
That's kind of how you know.
Yeah. I was like, I think that was a cover shoot. And it turns out we were number one and our CEO was on the cover of the magazine. So 6-page spread. It was amazing. Wow.
How do you beat that?
I don't think you can. I'm actually going to announce my retirement on this podcast. I've hit
there
peak.
You go. Yep. Wow. That is fantastic. Okay. So then, well, it might be in a 6-page magazine spread, but what would you say are some of your favorite ways to tell stories right now, especially with something like what you guys do, which is in data, privacy, B2B, security? It's not like you're doing TikToks, I imagine.
No. Speaking of being B2B and all of that, my favorite way to tell stories now is to really have our customers be the one to tell our story. So in PR, we think about journalists and externals and stakeholders. And I always encourage people that I talk to remember that their customer is a really important stakeholder that they have. So one of the core tenets we have at OneTrust is this concept of bear hugging. So we bear hug our customers and we bear hug each other. So when I say bear hug, what we mean is, what can we do to go that extra mile and support them in an obviously challenging time? And this is a concept that we developed back in March. So I love having our customers be the one to tell our story. That might be giving them an opportunity to speak on a panel or share their story as a reference. And when you as a vendor like we are can provide for customers value beyond the technology, you're positioning that you are a real partner. It's not just their program, their privacy security program that's going to elevate by partnering with OneTrust. It's their career. And they get to show their bosses, hey, look, I'm speaking at these big events. I've been shown as, a case study in how to do privacy and security. And then, that word of mouth marketing goes from there and, you get more customers as a result.
That's good. I like the bear hugging idea. Obviously not physically and COVID safe and all that stuff, but that's a good way to surround the client and yourself and all that good stuff. Oh, I like that. I haven't heard that before either.
Yeah, we bear hug our customers. We bear hug each other, which means, support our employees. This is there are situations that you don't know what people are going through at home right now, right?
Absolutely.
We were just talking before we hit record that, you're going through your day. Oh, work from home is normal. Then, boom, someone you love, has something happen to them and it kind of just changes your mental state, or maybe it's in your own family, and bear hug, your fellow employees, and then bear hug yourself, right? Drink water, exercise, get good sleep, try and find those barriers between working and home because those lines are very blurring.
Like that. Well, we have quite a bit of advice to go through.
All right,
Gabrielle. So let's hit it because we got 3 juicy ones here. So first off is, Dear BAMf, curious what the BAMFs would think here. In short, when is it the job of the agency to flesh out the entire marketing plan for a startup we work with? The long story is my agency was brought on board to specifically secure trade and top tier media opportunities for a startup client of ours. At the latest quarterly meeting with the CEO asked to see the marketing plan. The CMO, whom we work with, pointed to us and pretty much blamed us for not having one. We were so shocked and said we could, of course, develop an entire plan, but that was not the scope of work for our first 90 days together. Is there something else we could have done to handle this better or to better understand the quote unquote when to prevent this from happening again?
Okay.
Oh, fun times.
Oh man. I've never, in all of my time in startup, I've never experienced, not just kidding. Welcome to startup life is what I have to tell this listener. In startup, a quarter happens in a month and a month happens in a day. And what I mean by that is priorities change and adjust all the time. So while, this PR firm was mapping out their first 90 days together, the needs of the business itself could have changed 10 times. So I think this is a really good question. And I kind of want to break down a few of the places that the listener wrote about. So the meeting, I understand that getting blindsided by the CMO is not ideal, but this is actually a huge opportunity in front of the CEO to grow with the business. So getting top trade and media, that's great, but that's a starting point, right? That's your foot in the door. Being a partner for the broader marketing arm, that's the opportunity. And as the lines between PR and marketing are continually blurring, this is when you as a PR person really have that opportunity to go for it. So I'm a glass half full type of person. Yes, it wasn't ideal, but look, here I am in front of the CEO, able to showcase that I am more than just media relations. The second part of the question was how to handle it better. And, you can't read minds. You can only go off what's committed in your scope. So they did the right thing by saying, this is outside of our scope of what you're hired for, but you're excited to add on a broader marketing plan. My only advice there would be make sure that if you're going outside the scope, you have it in writing with the CMO and make sure that you're going to get paid for it as well, instead of just going above and beyond. And one way that maybe this could have been avoided is as you are getting contracted for media relations, especially for startups who maybe think that PR is media relations, but then the CEO may think that it's broader marketing, right? There's a disconnect. Maybe provide some sort of menu of options. In software, we call this cross-sell and upsell. You want A, but you might want B, C, and D with it as well. Yeah. So, whether you have broader web planning or SEO strategy to add on, you can give that menu ahead of time. And so maybe if the situation arises, you could say, oh, that was on the menu. I'll see that we add to it for our scope of work. So needless to say, this is to be expected in startup land, and use it as an opportunity to grow with the client.
It makes me a little nervous that the CMO was like, what happened with that? Like, blame, because the person does use blamed in here, which is like, oh, that's not good. So I'd be a little flag on that. But, to your point, it is the startup world.
I definitely don't agree that the CMO should have blamed them in any way, but I call myself sometimes, especially with my team, right? Like, let me take the blame for certain things. I don't want, and maybe they obviously haven't developed that relationship where they could have understood that at this point. But, frankly, you as the third party are likely going to take those punches sometimes, as the CEO may try and save face because maybe he or she did not fully interpret what the CEO's priorities were. And sometimes you just got to take those punches and roll with it when you are the person providing services as a third party.
Yes. 100% agree on that. You, unfortunately, being the external resource, are the easiest target as a scapegoat. Oh, well, it's not working because that third party. Oh, it's not working because that agency, they messed up our digital marketing. Oh, it didn't work. The ads failed because, the marketing agency over there or what, that's a convenient way. That's an unfortunate way. I hate to say it, but it happens.
Don't take it personally.
It's not personal at all. It's all about people and egos. Next one here. Dear BAMf, my client launched their consumer finance product earlier this year and just hired my firm to help out with PR. Their website is subpar, and we suggested starting our campaign with a messaging workshop so everyone is aligned on how we're positioning the company. They're eager for our PR campaign to start, but I don't feel comfortable sending journalists to their current site or social channels. Does the website really matter all that much? Is there any type of PR, such as thought leadership outreach, we can work on while we work to get the website up? I'm not quite sure how to push back.
This is another really good question. And also something in startup land we're constantly battling, right? So in software where there's this concept of MVP or minimally viable product.
That's right.
And for many businesses, the strategy is just get the MVP out there, see who buys it, and we'll adjust based on the user feedback and demand versus spending all this time on resources to get it perfect. So the chances are this website that your client has is an MVP and they'll get back to it later, but they know right now we have to have a website and social media to be a business, and not even just 2020 and 2000, right? So the net is, in startup world, if you're always waiting for something to be optimal, you're never going to get going.
No, exactly.
So you just sometimes got to work with what's there. So I do have some thoughts for this listener, just to get to the meat of the question, which is, can you start pitching journalists, which is what you're hired for, when the website is subpar? My answer is yes, but in more ways than he or she already identified. So we've already identified thought leadership as a way to do this. That's a no-brainer, something we absolutely should be doing. And without totally knowing what the company does, there are multiple ways you can do thought leadership. So one I've always loved is newsjacking. So taking trending consumer finance stories and fitting your customer in there. Another is bundling. So this is where you can take your product with other adjacent products that aren't competitors, but can tell a broader trend story. So for instance, in the consumer finance world, Robinhood is really big, right? So do you fit in sort of that micro trading, self-trading sort of industry? Or is there, are you providing loans to, a certain industry and you can, pair up with other products in the industry and tell a broader story about how tech is evolving in your industry? And then, of course, your super traditional bylines and op-eds. Cool, done. We've got it. Editorial, you can do that. But let's think about the other side. So this is the side that they're scared about, which is the actual product they deliver that lives on this website. So I would encourage this person to ask, what do we do better than everybody else? What do we differentiate on? It's unlikely that website user experience is the answer to that, but it shouldn't be, right? A good user experience is only as good as the tech behind it. Even in the early days of some of the most well-known B2B enterprise software companies, their user experience at the beginning wasn't always the best, but the product was. So people used it and people bought it, and then the user experience caught up. So ask yourself, what do we do better? Do you offer low barrier entry loans, maybe the lowest interest rates, or like I mentioned before, maybe they serve a specific market, and let that be the angle that they use to do these pitches. Because if you can tell a really good story and talk about how you differentiate, hopefully that will overcome some of those perceived website flaws. And then if that doesn't work, don't be afraid of the feedback, right? So if you are crafting the right pitches to the right journalists, if you're doing your research, you have a good story and you're getting into the right inboxes and you're still not getting a response, let your client know. What if the journalist says your website is bad? Let the client know. And then like the first question, use it as an opportunity to grow with the client. So do you offer website development services beyond just the messaging, which is important, or maybe you partner with someone and you can be the hero here. But if you do all of this and you do get your new website, you will be expected to deliver the results, right?
Oh, yes. Be careful what you ask for.
So if you blame it on this, make sure if you fix it, you get the results. But I don't think, like, again, in startup world, if you are waiting for the perfect product, you're never going to get going. Sometimes you just got to go with what you've got. And you as the PR person, it's your job to tell a story outside of what you're given, right? If the website was good enough on its own to attract journalists to write about them, maybe you wouldn't have the job that you've been hired to do, right? That's your job, is to find the way to make your company stand out and differentiate among all the others.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree on it is never optimized. It is never. If this is the world you're going to play in, which is land of startups, it's never optimized. So you got to just get in with what you can do.
100% agree.
And then the other point that you made that I do like, and it can be so valuable in a way, you're almost doing like internal PR. When someone then comments on it, when there's an external, especially someone who's gracious enough like media to say, you know what, that website looks like crap. That is tangible evidence, third party indications of material you can send to the client to validate where you're coming from. And that is gold if you get that. Oh, that is gold.
Totally agree.
That's where you can also, if you feel close enough, depending on how close your media relationships are, but if you maybe even could swing that to a few people and say, oh, hey, media friend, oh, it's a new client of ours, but could you just check out the website? I'd love your just feedback on it. And they'll be honest enough to write you a few lines back if they're that close to you. That could be super valuable.
I love that.
But that's if your relationships are close. And then you could say, hey, client, you know what? Here's what 3 of my close journalist friends said. They don't like it. They don't get it. There's no navigation. Okay. Before we go out then for more of any sort, these are the repercussions of not having an optimal site. So we're kind of setting ourselves up for failure. Client, why don't we work on the website? So that could be a way to use it too.
Agree.
Okay. Last question here. Dear BAMf, a client of mine just emailed to terminate our contract and it was completely out of the blue. They reassured my team it's not anything we did or didn't do, and it all comes down to lack of PR budget for 2021. We have 2 months left in our contract until we wrap up. What should I consider doing over these next 2 months to try and show the value of PR and win the client back? Does that even happen in your experience?
This one's a heartbreaker. I'm so sorry, that this has happened. And it's just always jarring to lose a client, especially out of the blue when you think the work that you've done is excellent and you have a relationship that's been going well. But it's the nature of 1, our business, and 2, the time that we're in, right? So here's what I would say. You need to approach the next 2 months with no expectation that anything you can do will win the client back, because it's likely this budget is set. And I don't want you going to the end of this, what I'm about to tell you, and be disappointed if that doesn't happen. So we don't know what the budget situation is. We may not get this client back, but there's a lot of things that we can do that's investment in the long run. And so here's what I would say. Go above and beyond in those last 2 months of your contract, and the work you put in now will pay back dividends down the line. And I'll give you asked for, does it happen in my experience? Let me just give you a story of something that happened in a previous role. So we hired a PR agency to help with a small project, and it had a small SOW, or statement of work. And a few weeks later, after we had closed this project, we had a crisis that we needed their help out. We gave them a call. They went above and beyond. They put the best people on it, even though it was out of the statement of work and we had already exhausted all of our budget with them. So why did they do that? Of course, they were investing in a possible future with us, and it paid off because a few months later, we had the business case we needed to get a retainer going for a PR agency, and they got the job, and we didn't even put out an RFP or talk to anybody else. So how that plays into the situation of the listener, look, budgets are tight. We know that, but they may not always be tight. And there's likely a time that this client will need PR help again, whether it's at this company or another company that he or she goes to. So if you continue to deliver and serve this client until the last day, there's a high chance that if and when they do need PR help again, or they get that budget back, you'll be the first person that they call. So do your best work and then stay in their line of sight even after the contract ends. So make sure you're connected on LinkedIn is obvious. Make sure you're sharing good content. Yes. But even though they're not a client, that doesn't mean you can't send them interesting news or newsletters, or make sure they know about webinars in the industry that they might be interested in.
Yeah,
like
keep
just
them in,
with your
keep them
journalist
friendly.
contacts. Yeah, you don't want to just be transactional with people, right? It's a relationship. Just because they're not paying you doesn't mean that you haven't developed
They're dead
this.
to you.
Yeah, exactly. It's ongoing. And, I can't tell you, how many years I've been in touch with people on the side. I know I've only recently gotten the ability to hire them, or, it's a long time. It's a small world, right? In PR. And like I said, there's a chance that if you do it right, if and when that budget returns, you'll be the person they call.
Oh, yes. Oh, I love this advice on this one. So true. Man, we've been here and it feels, it's like dagger in the heart, but sometimes it really is out of your control. Now, magically, I have to say there have been 2 cases I can think of when budgeter magically appears and it kind of 180s and the team will work, rigorously hard, because maybe another context to think of in this is that you want and will assume that this client will be back. Therefore, in your last 60 days, and this is sometimes the opposite approach from places, unfortunately, do everything you can at the same energy, the same effort, the same everything that you've given so far, so that it's not a wah at the end and that client's left like, wow, that really sputtered out to nothing. Guess I won't call them again. You want to leave them in the best place so they're like, dang, to the very last day, they were a partner. They kept me informed and they set me up for success moving forward when I was not going to have this budget or I went to a different team. It's the higher road to take. It can be very hard, but man, it goes a long way.
I absolutely agree. And, when I started off, expect that you won't, get the budget won't magically appear. That's worst case scenario. Set up your mindset that the business relationship is going to end at the end of this contract or the end of the 60 days.
Yes.
And
yes,
maybe
absolutely.
You'll be surprised that your hard work paid off. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, those are the questions for the day. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being on here, especially with, being number 1 on the Inc. list. You have lots of things to do, I am sure, and lots of priorities.
I'm happy to be here and happy to speak with you. I love the podcast and keep up everything you're doing, Beck.
Oh, thanks. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Gabrielle.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Milan. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.